Hello everyone, Jacob here. In today's lesson, we're going to talk about another way to use as much as in English. In a past video, we've talked about how as much as means 만큼. And if you haven't watched that video, go ahead and click this link down here. And I recommend watching it and then coming back to this video later, because this usage of as much as, this way to use as much as is a bit less common and it's definitely more difficult. So here, when we use as much as in this way, as much as plus a full sentence and then another full sentence, it can mean 하더라도, 뭐뭐 하더라도, or 뭐뭐 하긴 하지만, depending on the sentence. So in English, it's basically another way to say even though, or even if, depending on the sentence, or even it can sometimes kind of be similar to no matter how, 뭐뭐뭐. All right. So let's go ahead and look at our first example. As much as I like living in Korea, as much as I like living in Korea, I want to go back. I want to go back to America one day. Okay, so here, how are we using this structure? We have as much as and then a full sentence. I like living in Korea. And I really like living in Korea, but sometimes I miss my family, I get homesick, I miss American food, so I want to go back to America one day. I don't know when, but I think one day I will go back to America. Okay, so basically I can change as much as to even though in this sentence, and it has pretty much the same meaning. Even though I like living in Korea, I want to go back to America one day. 한국에 사는 것이 좋기는 하지만 언젠가 미국으로 돌아가고 싶어요. So that's what this sentence would mean in Korean. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at a second way to use this structure. Here we're using it with a full sentence, but it's also possible to use it in another way. You could say as adjective means 형용사, as adjective as 뭐뭐뭐, and then a full sentence. So if you want to use it with an adjective, you have to follow this structure right here, but it still has the same meaning. Okay, so let's look at an example. As difficult as it seems, you have to practice speaking alone. This is something I tell a lot of my students. A lot of my students who want to be good at speaking English don't practice speaking alone. Well, that's a problem. If you want to be good at speaking English, you have to practice speaking alone. Even though it seems kind of difficult. It's hard to speak to yourself alone. It's just not very natural. It's not comfortable. But you should do it. So here, again, as difficult as it seems is kind of like even though it seems difficult. Okay, and the structure is a bit different here because you don't want to say as much as it seems difficult. Whenever you're using it with an adjective, you want to put the adjective in the middle. As adjective as 뭐뭐뭐, as difficult as it seems. 어려워 보일지라도. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to our last way of using this expression or this structure with an adverb. You could say as adverb as 뭐뭐뭐, and then a full sentence. All right, so it's very similar to the way we use it with an adjective. So let's look at an example. As hard as you try, your English will never be as good as mine. Okay, so this is actually a little bit of a more interesting sentence because we're using the as much as structure in both ways. In the first part, it says as hard as you try, and this means 열심히 하더라도. Okay, so it has that 하더라도 meaning, and we're putting the adverb in the middle here, right? Don't say as much as you try hard. That sounds weird. As hard as you try, your English will never be as good as mine. So here, as good as mine means 나만큼 영어 잘할 수 없다. All right, and it's actually kind of a funny example. I don't want to make you feel bad, but it's true that as hard as you try, your English will never be as good as mine. Why? Because I'm a native speaker, and you will probably never be as good as a native speaker. Okay, and just in the same way, even though I study Korean really, really hard, I probably won't be as good at Korean as you guys. Okay, so it's just kind of a fact. So again, you could change this to even though, or in this case, you'd probably use even if. Even if you try really hard, your English will never be as good as mine. You could also change this sentence and say, no matter how hard you try, your English will never be as good as mine. Okay, so it kind of has both meanings. It's like a mix between even though and no matter how. All right. And I just want to say that you can't always use this structure when you can use even though. It's a bit more limited, more specific to certain situations. And I would say that it'd be really good to just kind of memorize, to remember these examples. As much as I like 뭐뭐뭐, 뭐뭐뭐. For example, as much as I like kimchi, I don't eat it all the time. As difficult as it seems is also very useful. As difficult as it seems, English isn't that hard. You can get good at English pretty quickly if you study a lot. As hard as you try, or as hard as I try, I can never beat my friend at StarCraft. Okay, so these 3 examples are quite useful and quite practical. So if you just kind of remember them, I think that's a good way to become familiar with this structure. So I hope you enjoyed the lesson. I hope you understood it, and I'll see you next time.